trickling in, I suppose. Shall we get started with our quorum present? We might get a lot done with a small number.
Our chance to rule.
Okay, so we'll begin our October 16th Cosac meeting. Welcome, everyone. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the agenda and the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Without objection, then we'll just approve those as is. And I guess we're going to get right into some level 1 evaluation criteria, unless anybody has anything else.
Can I make one announcement?
Yes.
Just by way of introductions, I want to introduce Emily Fletcher. She's the new Trails Assistant. So,
Great.
yeah, she's here to help us. So, we're glad to have her.
Awesome. Nice to have you here, Emily. Okay. So you probably saw that staff's been working on fleshing out some of the level 1 criteria for both the conservation easement applications and the trails applications. And so as far as diving into it, this would be diving into what hopefully you're able to see with the information that Annika sent out in the email. So we have that pulled up here, and this is the conservation easement level 1 criteria. How do you guys feel about just sort of talking through these? I'm speaking for Annika, but I'm assuming she just put in an equal weighting to each of the factors. So it's generic, right? It's not a recommendation or anything like that.
We just wanted to get the spreadsheet set up so that way it'd be easier to edit.
Yeah, and you can see if you did break it down evenly, how things would weigh out and decide what items are more important and give higher weighting to those. Does that sound okay as a way to proceed for the immediate future?
Yes, I mean, so I'm just trying to think how this connects to, are we going to be looking at GIS today?
We can.
I can pull it
I think
up.
she can pull up any of these items that are on this list.
Okay.
So maybe by way of just a little bit of background between last meeting and this meeting, I was able to meet with staff, and I believe Eric was also able to meet with staff separately.
Yeah,
Eric,
and Brent joined us as well.
Eric and Brent, to work on the trails criteria, and I worked with staff on the conservation easement criteria, kind of the way we set up for at the end of our last discussion. So I'll speak to the conservation easement criteria, and I'll let Eric speak to the trail criteria when we get to that. As far as the conservation easement criteria, we really did focus on what I think committee members were wanting us to emphasize, which was, you know, have this reflect the language that's in the bond. So in that regard, it's organized that way with 6 main headings, okay? And I think these are in the sequence of the original bond language, is that right? Did we confirm that by chance?
I did look at it. I didn't look at the sequence, so I
Okay.
can.
I don't believe it's in the
It might not be in the same sequence, but suffice it to say, it should
Yeah.
reflect the wording.
I think in the end, we might want to rearrange it
Yeah.
to
Sure.
that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great, and that, easy to do. I would agree. So, having said that, that is kind of the way this is structured for now, into the 6 main categories. And what made the most sense to me, based on what I've heard from other committee members and what I know of, you know, the GIS system at the county and maybe how these programs might work. We focused on what are the existing GIS layers that are available to us, and is that enough to answer, you know, these particular questions? And so the intent here is find as many objective components that we can, so that, you know, other than the weighting, it's not biased information, right? It's information that comes to us from verifiable sources, what have you. Or they may be unique layers that we create in the county at some point in the future. But I think these reflect what's kind of available to us. So we started with protect scenic vistas category, identified what we thought made sense was, I think what we're speaking to when we say protect scenic vistas, it's those vistas where the most people in the valley, you know, view the valley. Your most important vista may be from your backyard, right? But the point is, you know, which areas. And so major road corridors made sense in that regard. So we included major and minor state highways, and we can always discuss the breakdown of these things, but these actually compared well with what was done in Lisa, where we identified major state highways and then secondary or minor state highways, major county roads, and then added traffic counts as something that maybe made sense. These oftentimes overlap with major valley gateways as well. But gateways may be a confined area, and certainly protecting scenic vistas may pertain to any important road corridor within the valley, and there may be other viewpoints, so to consider. So that's that particular category, I guess. Does that make sense, or what?
I think it does, because on a road you might have 10,000, 20, 30,000 people a day go by, and they see that every day or every other day or on a weekend or whatever. Are there other non-highway clusters of people we'd want to take into account? The
Great
view
question.
from the stand at the Spectrum, or not the Spectrum, the football stadium, or a view from, you know, a state park, or Hiram Dam State Park or something,
Sure.
a background view where there's a cluster of people not on a highway.
Right.
Yeah.
I would throw in like the American West Heritage Center
Yeah,
as another
something like
destination where the scenery and the view from there is certainly important
Yeah.
to, you know,
Place
for
where-
the existence of that.
Place where views kind of matter to
Yeah.
people. Probably not the Walmart parking lot,
Right.
much as I like Walmart, but
Yeah, but a lot of people there doesn't mean we want to preserve the space right next to it, right?
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
The people don't go there for the view.
Right.
They go to American West Heritage Center
Right.
for view kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To your point, this kind of probably goes a little bit with, like, for example, the stadium. I know when we were going through it, the foothill areas were at least to some degree brought up in this discussion. A lot of people see the foothills, and to that degree, you know, you go down south and there's just this creep up the mountain, right? How far up can we build our houses? And I'm bringing it up more. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but that's something that did come up in the when this was brought up quite frequently.
Yeah.
To that point, one of the components that was assessed in Lisa was foothill areas specifically. So it's as a geographic area. So that is something we can add.
And here, I wouldn't say that these scores, and I think this will come through this entire thing, is something may score all points if it's by a major highway. It doesn't get 4.17 if it's by a major, you know. So it's not like each of these become criteria. It's how high is it
Yes.
in the mix?
Yep.
And that would be for the foothills too. And like I said, I'd love to hear some of that, what others feel about that. I mean, I think that view that you were talking about, Claire, is one of the most important to the people we talk to. But where does Foothills rank in that? So, I don't know.
And there might be an existing scenic view, and it would pay to expand it a little, conserve on both sides of it or something.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, because it's kind of a gathering point for people.
Great, I think that's a great suggestion. Any other discussion? Maybe, would it make sense to just sort of get an overview of everything, each of the categories, and then come back and talk about weighting, not worry about the
Sure.
scoring right now?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Maybe we flesh out the categories.
Yeah, yeah,
If we prioritize them, I don't know.
yep,
Like the first one is, maybe it is prioritized. You start with the major ones, more people.
Yeah, and I don't know that sometimes you put Foothill, she types it and then it stays in there. I'm just saying, we might want to debate that
yep.
now or give some credence to, are we giving some credence to it so that if it comes up, it will be talked about? We leave it there and it's one of the criteria.
Yep.
I think I emailed this out, but I'm trying to visualize, can't really, but cash in 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, think maybe Weber, Davis County, as you drive through there, what would be nice if they had preserved it? And it's probably something that's seen by more people, maybe the foothills, maybe alongside the corridor, probably not out in the middle of the valley where
You know, it kind of,
surrounded by industrial parks anyway.
it kind of gets pretty once you pass 12th North, right? And it goes green for a minute
Yeah.
up through there.
So we need to check with Tim, because he may have been involved in some scenario planning for Cache Valley. So there's that question. The other comment I would make is there was a corridor planning study for the corridor between Logan and Wellsville. And I thought they did some simulations.
Yeah, the Imagine Cache back in like 2010 did a bunch of that stuff.
Envision?
Or Envision Cache, that's it.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
right.
In a dozen years, we'll see how they do.
Yeah, they did a bunch of
Yeah.
studies, and Logan City itself adopted it, but none of the other communities committed themselves to it. And so I know it's floating around, and I'm sure we can find it.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, great. Let's talk about the second section.
Just on scenic vistas, that would be the vista from the corridor or the road, not necessarily at the road.
Correct.
But it's what you see.
Yeah, in
From
other
that
words, you get, there's more, the theory would be more points for being close to these heavily traveled corridors
I think with scenic vistas, it's view shed as opposed to proximity.
Right.
That's what struck me too.
Yeah. So what I would say to that though is that category addresses a more immediate area along the corridors. It's the second category that takes in the vistas, right? Because you're designating important gateways. They're in every.
So you're saying entryway
I
to
thought it
the
was
valley
just the
from the mouth of Wellsville.
That's, you can generate, for this category, you can generate scene areas from each of those gateways. And we can flop them, we can flip-flop them, right?
I guess
But-
whatever the word vista means. When I think gateway, I
Yes.
think alongside the road. When I think vista, I think.
And I think the opposite, so that's a great question.
I think I might be a little closer to Claire on this one.
Yeah,
But it should go with what was intended or
Well, I think,
common language, but.
I think there's some commonality here.
yeah,
So we might be getting down to some semantics of how we want to interpret it.
Yes.
But I do think that it will be important that people don't get hung up as they read from the top down, you know?
yes. Yeah.
But,
So sequencing is important,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that they're
think
like, wait,
sequencing
I thought we were doing this, and, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we are, but it's down 3 notches.
Another thing To consider though here too is that we're getting into the technical aspects of touchy-feely statements, right? Gateways, and so we're trying to convert that into some kind of specific item that we can measure, right?
And I think you've got a really good list here.
So this, again, is more or less the same list that was in the LISA document. So as we were talking through these categories, we're like, well, let's see what we did in LISA. Oh, well, there's what we did in LISA. That makes a lot of sense. Let's start with that.
I think it's a really good list.
The other thing about these points too is they tend to be superior positions other than American West Heritage Center, which is more center of the valley looking out, right? But they're superior points in the county. And so if you take in the view, if you, as you were discussing in your email, Claire, if you take that 1 mile corridor or whatever it is, bigger, smaller, larger, and you say, what can you see from this corridor? That's the experience that you get coming through what I would say is a gateway. So that's what this does. It's what we've done is we've identified that gateway and we've said, what can you see from this point? And then you can overlap all of those, or you can just look at one if you want. But you can overlap all of those and you can see what lands tend to fall out as being the most important.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. If a building's been built in front of it, yeah, and it's the land behind it, that will matter in this distance we talk about, because an obstructed view doesn't really, even though it could score high, we want to make sure it doesn't score high if it's obstructed. Conversely, if something doesn't have something in front of it, and then contiguously you see deeper, that's a plus, right?
Yeah.
Now, some of that would happen from that view shed, meaning something's obstructed, but it's not obstructed from the view shed.
Yeah.
So we just want to make sure, however we put the score to this, that we don't overly score something that you really can't see.
I drove those first two just because they were handy.
Mm-hmm.
And in both of those, there is that time you come around the corner, you go over a hill, and bam, there's the valley.
Boom.
And on both sides, it's undeveloped. And in the first half mile or so, and by the time you go a mile, you're down, there's generally houses on both sides or something else, but that first half mile or mile. And in part of that, there is a hill on one side, so you really can't see. So like you said, even a hill there could be houses up on top of that hill, you'd never see them. But on the lower area, you would see that. It's nice to be able to see over the top of that, to see the valley floor and the mountains and everything. But some quick arithmetic on that, if you're talking about a half mile, you're talking about 50 yards on each side of the half mile road, and then there are 6 of those, well, you're talking about 20 acres of that immediate foreground. And if there are 6 of them, or however many, and if you pay $10,000 an acre, and if they're all undeveloped farmland, that's $1 million if you just outright bought them.
Interesting.
And it's 5% of the budget. It might be impactful.
The other thing you see from that is I was a little bit surprised, because after you sent that, I watched it really close as I came back in.
Yeah.
Is there's quite a bit on this side of Nibley and kind of this inner side of Hiram that's just floating out, not next to the road, but it's definitely pretty major view shed pieces.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's contiguous with the Utah State, and I've had on my list that it'd be important for us at some point to have a conversation with Utah State in terms of
About their dairy center and that?
yeah, what's their needs to
Keeps growing.
well either that or I mean I don't know what they're
Yeah.
I believe that
If you get that far away, if I'm understanding Chris's word, gateway is that first it's the gate, it's not the whole path into the valley. If you take the next 5 miles into the valley, then it involves a lot more land, but I was just thinking of that
Yeah.
gateway, that actual first exposure to the valley.
Yep.
Like if the county ever wanted to put up a nice welcome to Cache County, you know, it really is this pretty, kind of a sign or something, that would be the place to do it, like a university does or something.
Mm-hmm.
Great,
Anyway,
okay.
I don't know that coming on US 30 from the canyon, I don't know if there's this place where you have that same moment.
You do get it, and I had the Contra experience when I saw that storage facility that just went up out there
Where's that?
on just past the Benson Marina. Not Benson Marina, Cutler. Is it Cutler? Yeah, in Valley View.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
quite a ways into the valley then.
Yeah, but you see it from as
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
come down. It's like, and then I just thought, oh, you could have this from here all the way out the thing if you know. It's a little different from that WoW experience, but it's still. I mean, and that'll depend on how much we want to rank these, right? Is that one more important than this one? Is that more important? Than
From the mouth of the canyon, from that gateway, that's far enough, I didn't even notice it, but I noticed it when I drove by it.
Are
And
you
then
talking?
you get the county buildings, and they're very much industrial looking.
Yeah,
up
quite a
on
ways
the
in.
left. Yeah. And salvage yard and a jail and
Yep. Sewage
like
lagoons.
sacrifice areas.
Yes, sacrifice area. One of the best vistas in the valley is from the back end of the dump, looking over the Wellsvilles when you're setting up
There
there.
you go.
It's really fantastic. I mean, it's like,
It's gonna be a
Let's say
scenic.
the dump's
scenic
about to become a
visit.
park, so.
Close it,
what's
yeah.
that?
So the dump is about to become a park in the next
Right.
few years.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's
Are they gonna seal it up and?
yeah. I think they're looking to put a mountain bike trail through over it.
Okay, so there's your scenic vistas, or maybe we should call them scenic corridors, and then valley gateways, two components. So let's scroll down to the next category.
While we're talking on that
Sure.
one still, and based on Eric's comment, what do you all think of ranking those, prioritizing those according to closeness to the initial gateway? Is that, I kind of like that because it's objective, you can measure it.
Closeness to the,
Well, that point where you come around the corner in Sardine Canyon and bam, there's the valley. From that point, I would think that I would rank those higher.
Sure.
so.
The closer you are to the gateway, the higher the score.
So
right? That's what
if
you're
you
saying.
see it, but it's closer to Nibley, you'd say you'd score it lower.
Yeah, I notice when I come around there, it's hard to identify what an individual building is used for. I mean, you got the mountains, you got the valley floor, then I'm thinking of just the initial 50 yards on both sides of the road
Yeah.
for that first half mile or first mile. If that stays as low development or grasslands or something, it serves to, well, it doesn't block your view
Yeah.
of the rest of it.
I would say for that valley gateway category, that makes sense to me, what you're saying, that you would score, the closest to the gateway higher than
I mean, it's
further.
10 acres there, to me, is worth a lot more than
Yes.
10 acres down by the storage shed. Because coming around there, you're just not gonna, that blends into the whole rest of the view.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that what you're talking about does is it gives you the view that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you put something there,
You don't have any of it,
yeah.
yeah. Or even like I mentioned, if you grow corn there, you're not gonna see it. The corn's pretty on its own.
Yeah.
Some people like corn.
I like corn a lot.
If I had to choose a building or a corn right there.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about scenic vistas, one of the most scenic areas in the valley is the Cutler.
Yeah.
It is.
When the sun comes up through Cutler, it's amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, people just love that, but
yeah.
Along with that's the sewer ponds out there.
Water.
some days it's a nice day.
Yeah.
When the sun comes up, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's very unique too. I mean, we've built maps of that, and it's just, I mean, it's artistic in and of itself.
Yeah.
To have that much water in a dry state, it's unusual.
Yeah. That would score very, very high on our water lands, right?
I think that category would capture that component. I mean, one thing about Cutler is, right, it's owned by Pacific Corp.
Pacific Core, they own
And
it
so they control their property around there, which, you know, I think we all would anticipate they're gonna keep as
They own
natural
the
as
land
possible.
around it?
But,
Or-
yes, up to a
Yeah, they do.
point, but, you know, beyond that, it's all private. And so.
Having
somehow-
buildings right next to that would be a little sad.
Yeah, right, that's gonna change what you
There is
enjoy
some-
from Cutler
all.
Reservoir,
Yeah, if you look
right?
to the north, there's some houses and stuff that you see when you come through there. If you look north across Cutler, you see that. But you turn around and go south, you see the Wells fields and all of that, and that's, you know, amazing in itself. But,
Yeah.
you know, you're talking about vistas and stuff, but, I mean, look at what a vista is. I mean, look at the Wellsvilles, you know, look at this, turn around and look at this. That's our vistas.
Yeah.
And to say that we're gonna try to do something about that, I mean, we're gonna try to plot some land there so we keep our vista. In the first place, it'll be really expensive because people know is a vista and really wanna do that. So we have to be looking at other things like, look at Joe Furman's place. I mean, he's got the river through there, you turn around, you go to the west and you see the Wellsvilles, you turn around to the west, you see all the mountains. I mean, that's a vista in so many ways.
Yeah,
And it has, you know, wildlife habitat with fish and stuff.
Yeah.
It's agriculture, has all those things. But it's
So-
also one of the highest retail values
sure.
in the area.
So let me
The
just,
nice thing it does is it also breaks our communities, which I think
Exactly.
ups identity.
helps maintain some identity, yeah.
Yeah.
Space
Yeah.
between the communities.
And it's not that they're, anyone's against it, but
Yeah.
like you have that and then you have a trail kind of going through it, connecting it. Boy, that gives you a sense, that's a positive sense of community, I think.
So the reason those easements were put in place is what you just said, is it kept the distance between all, you know, everybody coming this way. That was one of the main purposes, was to do a conservation easement there, which is already there.
So the way this criteria, I think would reflect on Joe's property is under scenic vistas, you know, it says major state highways. And so SR 165, which goes right by his property,
Is a major.
it's the half-mile corridor on either side of that highway, which would encompass Joe's property.
You have a high
And-
basis
and
score,
so
because it's
he-
agriculture,
he
you have
would-
that on top of it.
He would score well, is my
Sure.
point. He wouldn't score well for a gateway necessarily, he's not
Right.
at one of those locations, but that's the intent of number one, would capture a property like Joe's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's positive, and I don't know that we're looking for every one of them. Like, on this versus trails, you're not gonna have scores all near the top all the time.
Nope.
Something scoring really high on one of them may be a check mark, let's do this,
Yeah,
which is a little interesting.
yeah,
And look at the university, I mean, you have all these places there, but if you come off the end, it drops off and you see everything about the
Yeah.
whole valley, and that's, every time they use that for any publicity, is that's what they show, is that view.
Yeah,
you know,
The-
for their own
There's that.
They've got all this development,
Yeah.
but they show the view.
Temple Boulevard, we walked that, last night. Wow, talk about vistas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, let's overview some of these other categories. So under the maintain agriculture component, this is where we put more of the agricultural related metrics. So we included like soil productivity, land capability, so that tells you whether or not, you know, the soils are appropriate for agriculture. The size of the parcel, the type of farm activity. So this is intended to help both production, agriculture type operations as well as ranching. So the different activities there. And then we added proximity to protected lands. We thought that was relevant. So other agricultural protection areas or conservation easements. And again, we're looking at the list of things that we have that we can measure, right? And we're saying, okay, do any of these help us with any of these categories?
These come from
And if we
GIS.
said, maybe this is a good one, we just threw it in there, right?
Yeah.
And so, in some cases, there might not be strong rhyme or reason, but suffice it to say, we found a home for everything.
Okay.
Subject to your edits.
Yeah, now I think this one's a little different than some of our other ones, like something near a major highway on the top one, I think gets all the points, even though we had things below it.
Yeah.
This one is a cumulative one.
Yeah.
Meaning we kind of are summing up, isn't more intended to sum up and then that equals 14 out of 16 or something.
You know, on a presentation from the McAllister Fund, I think it was, they mentioned two words that I think ought to be on our list somewhere: unique and irreplaceable. They've just stuck with me that there's a lot of farms in the valley.
Yes.
And priority ought to go to those that are in some way unique in some important way and irreplaceable. There's a time.
Yeah, does Joe's place become more unique and irreplaceable the more encroachment it gets on it? I don't know, that's a...
You have a historic value of Joe's Place too. I mean, they were the first place to bring cows into the valley. It has that history that forever about it.
Yeah.
And then you have to add the agricultural part, and you have the waterways.
So one of the things we could throw on the list here is like a century farm designation. I believe we have that layer of data as well.
And I guess my unique and irreplaceable is not a GIS category.
Maybe not,
But,
yeah.
but the others are, is that right? That they're measurable?
Well, let's
That's-
just come
that's the
back to this when
intent.
we get done with
Yeah.
it and say, did we hit this in the process?
And I think that's a great example of maybe that's a level 2 sort of thing, right? Where we can learn more of these, you know, non-quantitative, more qualitative aspects of a project.
I think that's more important than these scores that we're trying to do, in my opinion. That's what we're looking for.
But
I
it's
think
hard to
that's-
score, that's the problem.
I know, you're trying to come up with
Right.
some number,
Yeah,
and you're not. You're gonna walk up and say, this is amazing, and this is why it's amazing.
Sure.
That's what you're gonna see.
at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I think so.
But to try to put a score on this and try to do what you're trying to do, I can't put any of this stuff in a score like we're trying to do. But I can show Cutler, and I can show Furman's, and
Right.
I can look at the scenic view here, I can see that, that's unique to me,
Yep.
but I can't put a 10 on it.
I think, yeah, this process is intended to be as objective as possible, and I think that sort of information is important and is going to set a project above the others that might score well, you know, in this sort of quantitative process.
I still think it should be pluses or minuses.
And no,
That's
no
how-
numbers,
Yeah, that's my opinion, but
Right.
that's,
right?
you like it or you don't like it.
Sure.
This is why we like it, because it has,
Yeah, we could save a lot of time if we just, go with, fill out this application and we'll decide based on gut or whatever, but,
it's not gut, it's what we think's valuable to us.
I think it's value though to start with the objective criteria that are measurable, not that we're going to end there.
no.
And
and I
if we
don't
were
think-
to ignore those, I don't know, we should probably have them in there somewhere.
This is a way to, at least start the process with as little bias as possible, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, the bias comes into the weighting and that sort of thing. We can decide what's more important or what we think the public believes is more important and weight it accordingly and then look for a round two type of application that can,
Are we doing that just to protect ourselves or to actually do what we're trying to do?
I think a little bit of both. I think
we're-
in a way, it weeds out the projects that don't deserve to make the list.
Well, and some people can do their self-weeding, rather than us getting a pile of stuff that just, that's one.
Yep.
Like Bear River Land Conservancy and say, you're a good match for this or you're not, before it ever shows up here. The other thing is, I think it's a healthy process for us to go through prior to getting that, because we've already worked through these things, say, yeah, that matches.
Yeah.
Because I mean, at least what the council has given us, they don't want us to be making gut shots. Right? Isn't that kind of feedback?
Yeah.
I think it's also fair to the people applying for us to be able to say exactly why they aren't approved, because it's not always going to be us on this commission. So if it is just a gut reaction, maybe we would have approved it, but the next people here won't. And then that becomes really hard for people to want to apply because they'll have no idea how to get approved. But if you actually have at least the first round being objective, then they know that there's a point to trying because here's the criteria, here's what it means, and it's worth the effort. But if there's too much gut reaction and too many people are getting rejected without a valid reason, people will stop applying.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I would also say that part of it comes down to where this money is public dollars. Doing some sort of objective criteria, at least particularly up front, that will help avoid any appearance that the county's giving money to buddies of the people who are in power, that you can show scores, because people who apply will likely know some of you or members of the council, and having some of this objective criteria will allow the county to be able to provide evidence for why they made considerations or recommendations as we did.
Yeah.
I think, the fundamental assumption in all of this is that we're gonna get more applications than we have funding available, right? And maybe a lot more. And there's gotta be a way to weed through these, with as much objectivity in an initial round as possible, I think.
I do think this also helps us turn the table in terms of there are land that people want to see preserved, and this lets certain people know they've got property that we value. And here's an opportunity, rather than turning it into 500 homes, to reach out to us. The Joe Furmans.
Yeah.
I'm on a major highway, I'm a historical,
Yeah, I think his project ticks off all of these except maybe being next to a gateway, but
But I think a lot of them won't be that way.
Yes.
They're gonna just not be one of them.
yes.
One way to maybe pin down what Dave's talking about would be a portfolio of the existing or the successful developments, non-developments, easements, conservation that are done with photographs. Picture's worth 1,000 words. There, we've got 1,000 words.
Yeah.
But, and then an applicant could come through and say, oh, mine's kind of like that one, or I can't quantify it, but yeah, it's got that same wow factor.
Yeah.
Do they have that online or somewhere?
Yeah, I think though that some of them haven't been, don't match. In other words, some people have been like, well, John White's Place in Paradise is on there, but no one sees it. Like very few people get to enjoy that. You know, the Coldwater Ranch is going to get a ton of money. No one can access it. They've got that forest easement. No one can access it, and no one sees it. I'm sure there's some value to it, but it's not the ones that.
Yeah.
Those aren't easements that I think that we're all excited to.
And maybe this group would sort through and pick out the Joe Furmans, the Zollinger, and say, this is what we're looking for.
Yeah, but Zollinger's doesn't mean a lot.
Our projects are gonna play a certain role in the county that maybe other projects don't.
Yeah.
Project or programs, right? There are other programs that will do really well, or that certain projects will score really well that may not score very well with us, and that's fine, right?
We have an assignment. We've been given an assignment.
Exactly.
This is the list.
We got Cache County taxpayers want to see some value.
Yeah.
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 They wanna know what they're buying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great idea. I can say that the LISA system probably was used in somewhere around 15 to 20 of the existing conservation easement projects in the valley. We didn't have a local funding program, so it was just simply informative back to the people who were supplying the money, right? Whether it was Lee Ray McAllister or any of the other programs that we've talked about. You know, there was quite a wide range of scores. You know, if you took all of those easements and looked at their scores, some of those may not score very well in this process. So,
Did you learn some things about Lisa that would lead you to maybe change the weights or that, since we're on agriculture?
I mean, clear to me, this is what this is, right? This is a reinvention of what was considered to be the categories and weighting at that time, which was an agricultural focus.
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, so this is, you know, we're not going to call it Lisa, but
Yeah.
it's a similar process intended to provide some level of objectivity and help us make decisions on what, you know, if we get a bunch of applications, Dave, which projects should really be at the top of that list that goes to the county? And this is not the whole story on that, right? It's more than just the score.
I just have to apologize because I've done a lot of conservation easements, a lot of
Yep.
them. And I've been down these a million times. So I can kind of do this in my list of what I like about them.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of avoiding this number things, because I can do it just by myself.
Yeah.
I think this is great, this isn't great, you know.
But like Lee Ray McAllister's not going to let you do that if you're applying to there.
There was a one-page deal, and all we had to do is say, yeah, we really like this, let's get some money from McAllister and go. That's what we did first. But Lisa was part of that. We always looked at Lisa for everything. Because we wanted to know that ag, because we wanted to take advantage of the ag money. But, but there was kind of a list of things that we can just go through and decide that we really want to do this. That's kind of how I am, sorry about that.
No, not at all.
What we need to do is get that map out of your brain onto a piece of paper so that whoever's in these chairs 2 years from now won't have to reinvent that wheel. So if you can help us.
That's exactly what modeling is actually about, right?
Yeah.
You know what it is. Now make it.
Write it down somewhere.
And the last thing we talked about last time is we need to have somebody who wants to do it.
Yeah,
Number one.
Yeah.
that's right.
So determine everything we do.
It's probably the first thing.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this helps some of that. People want to do it. Oh, look, this is, yeah.
I'll also say that, you know, if we set this up, anybody, any landowner, any of us, anybody in the county can come in and submit a parcel number and find out what the score is. That's how it should work. Maybe not, maybe not instantaneously, right?
But it's not far from it.
Yeah, exactly. Every parcel can be scored in a relatively short period of time.
And I know some of these landowners that we're talking about in these areas, and it would be different if we get it on paper like this. And I mean, some of them may change, like as we're talking, like it may not match up. But some of them on that thing to say, hey, take a look at this. And I mean, these are, I don't know them real well, but well enough that I could call them up and say, we'd love you to look at this.
Okay, I'm just gonna keep rolling if that's okay. So that's the agricultural sector, maintain waterways. The items we put under that there included floodplain areas, because waterways have a floodplain, right? And this is something we can measure, so floodplain, wetlands, those are generally gonna congregate around waterways, actual waterways themselves, so the stream or river channels, water bodies, so lakes, ponds, and we don't differentiate, I don't think, between man-made or natural, right? And then springs. So those are the items that we have data for that we put under that category. So what are we missing?
Can you help me through this, educate me on this?
Sure.
Are we looking at preserving the water quality, or are we looking at conserving lands around these because people congregate there, or it's a view, recreation, or all of the above, or?
So for me, it would be all of the above, right? So preserving areas around these helps protect water quality, for example. This is one way I look at it.
This one, I think, might tie a little bit to public access in a way down the road as we get down there. I know some people feel like there's some waterway preservation that, boy, I just don't have no access to it. It's, that would serve a constituency that was in favor of our bond.
Are there examples of prior easements or conservation come to mind specifically for that category?
Most projects have one of these categories, if not more, on them, typically. So, I mean, if we use Joe's example, like he's gonna have pretty much every one of those things on his property.
Yeah. Bear River's first project, I thought it was the first, you'd know better. What's the one down on the river bottoms that they have?
Bear River, yeah, it's Bear River, basically, it's the conservancy.
Bear River bottoms.
Yeah, the bottoms.
How big of an area is that?
The first part was 400 acres and the second part's about the same.
Okay.
And the idea is to get 1,800 acres. It's all said and done. Where Pacific Core is, because of its value.
Mm-hmm. So that falls in this, right?
Yeah, it falls in.
What are some of the reasons that there's a
Landowners. It's not Pacific Core's. They have the right of way, but they're other people's land. So they own the land. And then we use part of it to put easements on it for cows. You know, They lease it from the individuals and stuff, so they do both.
But you're preserving it for, like, what's the, I guess, what's the,
What's the value of it?
oh, yeah, yeah. Visual, that it's a waterway, that it's, I mean, wildlife lives it. Yeah, natural habitat.
It has everything in there that's,
Okay.
you know, with the water that's there and everything that's there. It pretty much conserves everything that's there. And we lease it out for cows, take care of it.
Who's the landowner on it?
There's 4 or 5 of them.
Okay,
There's 5 different leases,
okay. And that's just individual people?
individual people. Yeah. But Pacific Corp owns the property.
Oh, they own the property?
Yeah, and it's conserved by us.
Okay, and then it's leased from,
Yeah.
Pacific
Yeah,
Corp.
because we take care of it, we are allowed to do the lease.
and you get the revenue
We
off,
get the revenue.
which I'm sure doesn't amount to a ton,
It
but,
doesn't amount to anything, but it helps us do other things there to improve it. So it's kind of a catch-22. You know, I'll give you an example. It's the San Juan Mountains, the Abajos. Well, you think there's a value there? You ever seen it? You ever seen it, ever? It's up by Blanding and Monticello?
oh, yeah, the Bajo, yeah, I've been in
The
it.
Bajos.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the most important parts of that is it's really pretty and there's lots of wildlife there. But 100% of Blanding and Monticello use all of their water from the runoff from there.
Just can't amount to a ton.
Yeah, I mean, they have a tunnel across that mountain for water for Blanding, the recapture reservoir. But that's the most important part of it, is the scenic view and the water. And everything else is a plus. But the water keeps those people in life, basically.
Okay. Any other questions or suggestions on waterways? If not, let's talk about maintain wildlife habitat. And the components we included there, important habitat areas, wildland urban interface areas.
Do you have a pretty good GIS on all of these?
You should put fish in there.
Fish and wildlife habitat?
Yeah.
Good.
Or put it as one of the items, is what it's saying.
Fish habitat areas.
One of our biggest amount of money may come from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife money that we get, so.
Should I do fish
Yeah.
habitat?
Yeah, as one of the categories. I mean, fish wasn't in the bond language per se, but I think, yes, it should be part of the criteria.
Probably affects more people than deer and elk, or at least as many, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We'll find a metric that we can use for that to help, to try and represent that, and, maybe that's part of the water.
Yeah, that's
Component.
I was trying to work through my head, is that maybe it falls under the.
They do need water.
Yeah.
Well, and a healthy waterway
Yeah.
has healthy fish.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
Just let me touch on the rest of these migratory bird production areas, deer and elk migration corridors, mule deer habitat, game habitat, deer and elk winter range, and then we got fish habitat down there at the bottom. So each of those categories does represent some layer of data that we have access to, and I may not know the full story on each of these, but we can provide that information, what they mean.
I would say probably some of our weaker ones are some of the big game migration areas. There's just not as well documented, especially when you get into the valley floor. They have, you can look at DNR's website and they have some migration patterns, particularly up in the mountains, but there's not a lot once you get into leave the
We got
mountains.
a lot of information in Blacksmith Fork
Blacksmith
Canyon.
Fork.
Yeah, we were in a meeting with, and Wildlife Services was there on Sardine, and that's one area they haven't mapped at all.
Yeah.
They said they've been collaring in other areas, but they haven't collared that area, but yet it's known that they cross right there at that,
Yeah, there's multiple crossings
yeah.
under
We
that.
tried to do a conservation easement on the Hunsaker property, which is right next to Hardware. And we got beat out by somebody's money
Awesome.
and didn't get it. But the value of that was important to all of the things you're talking about, but we didn't have the money to do it.
Question on these layers, on the
Yeah.
county GIS map now, are
Yes.
they available online,
Yes,
all of them?
yes,
So you can click and, oh, okay,
yes.
I'll do that.
That's all we did, Annika and I, and then Stephen joined us, and we sat down and we opened up the GIS layers that are publicly available. We said, what of these
Yeah,
could maybe help us with this?
Yeah.
And so, just trying not to reinvent the wheel and use the tools that are easily accessible.
if you open them all, does it cover the whole county?
Yes.
Or not so much?
Yeah, most of these,
Say them all.
I mean,
No,
yeah, I mean, is there a piece of the county that doesn't apply to one of these?
I would say, I think for most of these, our GIS covers, like I said, probably the weakest points are some of the big game migration areas.
Yeah. No, I meant, is there an acre in the county that doesn't fall into one of these?
well, and
categories?
that's where the layers go on top of each other, and you've got these, like, multiple scores that, if you could imagine, like, all these layers have scores, and that comes up to a sum.
Yeah,
It might get something, like my house might get something.
yeah, my house.
Well, I got migratory, I got migratory issues, so let me tell you that, but,
Here in the backyard.
yeah, well, I live on the highway of the deer.
Okay.
But there's a lot I just score really poor on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Annika's going to go through and kind of show some of these layers as you kind of can click through them and how they kind of stack on top of each other.
Okay, so this is Logan area, this blue part. So right now I have water bodies and floodplains on. And then you can like turn on canals or springs, and sometimes it takes a second to populate. Sorry, it's really hard to see.
Can you go something really diverse from the water, just so it shows how diverse you can like mix together?
Yeah, so then if we want to look at,
Existing conservation easements.
yes, let me find that one. Okay. Oh. Uh-oh. Don't have my mouse. It's a little rough.
Mouse, if you want to plug it in.
Okay.
Whoa.
Sorry. Let me use a mouse. This is gonna be rough without one.
On this one, on waterways, the blue there is a varying width. Does that relate to floodplain? or-
Yeah, that's the FEMA floodplain.
That's right.
Okay.
And so there's also a layer that is like the stream channel itself, the
Yeah.
river channel itself that's also in there.
That's where, hopefully, the appraisal takes that into account, so we don't overly pay for something in the floodplain, right?
Some of those take care of themselves. Floodplain, you can't build, wetland, you can't build.
Yeah.
I would say, you can technically build in the floodplain, you just.
And you can technically
You
build
wanna
in
pay-
a
pay
wetland,
for it.
Yeah.
get through the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we have floodplains in this teal, and then this hatched pattern is a conservation easement. This is Joe Furman's. So you can put those together, and then if we want to look at,
So the existing easements are mapped also? That's
Yes.
real good to know, okay.
That look
important
familiar,
habitat
Kendra?
areas.
That shape is haunting my nightmares.
Where
do you have one right there?
Yeah, the bottom of Joe's is us.
Right there.
Yeah.
So there's no important habitat areas in this area. And that would be the primrose, lynx, sage grouse, and yellow-billed cuckoo. But if we zoom out in the county, those spots might
You can
start
see
to
right
show
up
up.
there.
Up at the
That's what-
top right.
Oh,
What about all the turkeys?
I don't know about the turkeys.
Pretty much covers everything.
Yeah. Including downtown Logan, where I live.
They're an invasive species.
Okay, so, yeah, there's a pretty good example of,
Now, but there's also ability to put scores to these, right?
I mean, that's what we're developing.
Well, but isn't there like on the GIS system itself? And I've looked at it more from
It's a GIS process, yes.
Yeah, because we've done it where we don't have this tool, we've got like another tool, but it's commercial, right?
Yeah.
We're doing it for, is this a good place to put a store for a retail location,
Right.
for example?
Yeah, there's different ways to use
And
that
then-
tool. And so
and
you're
then-
gonna create an application to process, this information, a GIS application.
Yeah, and I imagine you've got one, right? Like either with this system or another system that we can put those scores together.
They would have the Lisa system.
Currently, the system doesn't exist to put that in. It's something that we could potentially make in the future. We'll have to talk to our GIS. Once we kind of get the categories and
Okay.
everything that we're looking for, we can take that to our GIS department and see what's possible.
Yeah.
Or they can
and
build.
I mean, the person in particular who worked to develop the Lisa system, can have you talk to them as well.
View shed wise, is it easy to hit the view shed on this?
I'm not
I
sure if
don't
it's on
think-
this map. We do
yeah.
have it.
I can show you, like I use CalTopo for that all the time. But we could always switch to a system and say, okay, this is our location. It's whatever Claire was saying, location wise. You put a pin there and you say, okay, show me the view shed, and it
Yep.
I use that to, when I'm up on one of these peaks up here, and there's actually one where says you can see the Tetons. I've never seen them, but
Really?
On a clear day.
yeah, on a very clear day and with better eyes than mine.
Good pair of binoculars.
I mean, there's curves at some point.
so I'll just show you what Chris was showing me the other day. So in this Lisa handbook, it has a bunch of maps that will have data too. So like this one is proximity to protected lands. So if it's dark green, it's 100 points as it was in the Lisa model. And then, let me find the view shed one. This is housing development. I'm sure it's grown since 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's towards the end, I think. That was foothills, by the way. So there's corridors.
These are the road corridors. Bench protection. View shed analysis.
So that's taking each of the gateway areas and identifying those lands that can be seen from multiple gateways at once.
I'll try to zoom in so you guys can see.
So the blue there is what you can see from the gateway, not what you can see from within the blue area out.
Correct.
Okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so on this map, there's, I don't know if you can see these little stars. Those are from
Those are the location.
the locations.
Oh, yeah.
So this is different than what we've been talking about, right? This shows the lands that are seen the most from those points, right? It's not the land closest to that point, right? Which is captured by the corridors.
Yeah, but our second one was the gateway views, right?
Correct.
And that would be this, roughly.
That, it's similar to this, but this looked at the same, it's a different way of looking at the same thing to reflect a different, a different endpoint. So we wanted to know what lands are seen the most from these gateways, okay? And that's what this shows. What we were talking about earlier was more of what are the lands in closest proximity to the viewpoints? What's this immediate, if I understood Claire, what
Just-
he was trying to capture.
For the purpose of being able to see the rest. If you build a
Correct.
house right there, you're not gonna see any of that.
Correct.
If we were to preserve that, maybe it's not very pretty by itself, but it allows you to see out the rest of it.
And a little bit depends on the elevation of the highway to start with.
Yeah, we generally tried to
A
pick
lot of times, on one side of the road,
superior
you've got
positions.
flat land, and you can see over the top. On the other side, you've got a berm or a hill, and can't see anything.
Right.
Okay, and then this one's a visual composite, so using the view shed and the major roads.
And if you go to that, you do see really dense areas.
Yes.
Right along the,
The highways, including
yeah.
the gateways. And the dark blue area does encompass all the foothills, for example.
Because you intentionally did that, right?
Yes,
You
that was
put
a
foothills as a layer.
Correct.
And I think that'd be a little bit for us to determine, is that as high on this? Yeah.
Right.
Because that could burn up a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, like, we have access to these layers. We can get them on our GIS system so that once we know which layers we want, we'll talk to the GIS group and have them put those on, and then we can turn all of them on once we get conservation easement to see how it scores and what layers are applicable.
Okay. Let's jump to our last category here. So this was the trail and trail connectivity. Another way to think of this is public access, right? So we are somewhat reflective of, I think, the trail application information, but just as a starting point. So we thought it was relevant if a parcel of land, an owner of a parcel of land that happened to be located on a municipal or county trail master plan.
Now, if they say
get
no,
points. Right, they're not gonna get points for that,
it just zero this out.
I would assume. Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume too, because
Unless they're saying something other than a trail. So these are two trail categories, right? Maybe we need to.
Yeah, I
we
think
also say
there's-
connects to an existing trail, right? Maybe it's, for the land, there are landowners out there now who allow access to the property for fishing, in some cases for hunting or whatever, and so.
I think there needs to be another
Some-
category. I mean, I would score Zollinger's just a little bit higher even because we can go and they do some sort of
You could say other public access or something like that.
The trail people have all.
this isn't for full public access. I think that's what we want to be careful of. Allow some form of public access. And that may need to be subjective, us saying, okay, they said that people can fish on this, is how high are we gonna score that? Or it's the Bear River bottoms, and they,
I mean, that's a way, this is a way for a project to get some points.
bonus points.
If they're not, doing a trail, per
Yeah.
se, right?
Yeah.
So we want to reward a landowner who allows for some level of public access, because we think that's important, right? It gets back to the, whoever sees it, right? The Coldwater Ranch example or something like that.
Yeah, if Coldwater Ranch said, hey, you can come and ski on this, or you can hike on this, or you can fish on this. Fishing, for example, I know people can't fish that Ant Flat Road stuff because Coldwater has that. They don't let anyone cross them, my understanding, right? It's kind of hard to go and give them money. No one's gonna see it, no one's gonna touch it.
Yeah, there's other programs
There's other programs.
would suit that.
Do they have an application pending, or they?
No, they were awarded the forest land one.
Okay.
There came out quite a bit of money to preserve forest lands.
Forest Legacy money came,
Yeah.
but that was a long time ago,
No, that was this year.
the second part of it.
All I know is that they got it this year.
Yeah, Blacksmith Fork was 20 years ago, first part.
I think it was in the Inflation Act.
They got the money with an easement criteria or condition, is that right?
Yeah,
Conservation easement.
Conservation easement.
Yep. I know something came up, the two that got it, my understanding is, it was this and something in the Wellsvilles, but on the other side, which, I mean, that has, I think, a little more public
Yeah.
view to it. I'm not sure which.
See that being maybe a higher federal priority where we need to look after the local people.
Yeah, that's what people are, voted on, right? I mean, I think they're looking for benefits here in the valley.
I think it's a good list.
That's the list.
do we have a list of existing trails anywhere?
We've got it's on maps.
So can it be put on this GIS stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we would do for,
You've got that on.
Those
Isn't there a layer that
two-
is I think there's a layer that's our master trails plan. I mean, it can really, by the way, it can really hurt us if there's someone that has land and we give them this money and we can't, yeah.
That was
they're
the
on the map for a trail and they don't do
Trails
that.
Master Plan parcels. So,
Those
another-
are all the parcels that a trail master plan goes to, master plan trail.
Am I right? There's the layer on.
Yeah, so we do have every city who's adopted a trails master plan, we've incorporated that, and the county has one. I wouldn't necessarily say across the whole county that we have every trail mapped. Do you know if we have everyone?
Gary tries to map every new trails built. It just depends on if he's informed of it.
Yeah.
So cities build trails and don't tell us, we might not have them. But every trail we know of is mapped.
Yeah, it's pretty extensive.
Yeah. And we might also not have every wilderness trail either, though, too, right?
Wilderness trails, I don't know if that would play into this because,
Forest Service land.
yeah.
And we do have Forest Service's trail plan. We have it integrated into ours. So every trail that the Forest Service recognizes, we should have.
Okay. Yeah, great.
So, what are you thinking, committee members, about how these 6 categories in general should weigh against each other? If you just divide it evenly, it's about 17% for each category.
I don't
What do
mind
you
it as
think?
much as I thought I would.
Yeah. Kendra, what do you think?
I think that the first round, they need to be evenly weighted, because, I mean, like I had said in my email earlier, the bond initiative that we voted on didn't rank them, so we can't rank them. I mean, we can, of course, be a bit more subjective at level 2, but level 1, I think they need to be the same.
I think there'd be an argument on number 6 to it plays lower because we've got this other process for doing it. That being said, I worry if this is a really important corridor for a trail and we give them money and they're saying no access. That's the only reason I'd leave it. I think it also could be said that we would theoretically give someone more money for that trail access because we're really getting two things, not just a conservation easement, we're getting a trail easement. And both of those have value independent of each other. And we probably need to pay for both. If you think about it, and you think about the state plan, which has come out more and more and more, I don't know if there's a big article about it here on the this route from Wellsville to here really coincides really well with their plan. I mean, theoretically, there would be some route that goes between the two places that would be a 12-foot wide trail. Am I right? That goes to a little bit to Claire. You're like, if you got both sides, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a.
Because I don't get out.
That's a
I
little.
wasn't that familiar with that type of trail.
Yeah, but it's not a whole lot different than as you go along Bear Lake, right, the road,
Yeah.
and there's a trail that's offset and kind of rolls through the.
Yeah. And it's more that highly developed kind of a trail, paved and wide and flat. You can ride a bike, you can push a baby stroller, you could jog. Yeah.
They have, I went along Missoula, along a highway in Missoula, and they had that, and you see the people running. You know roughly what I'm talking about? And it just gives you a different feel, too, about the community when you have all that going on as you're driving down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are other thoughts on is, more or less even between the components, or is there one or two that should be ranked higher?
I'm saying too much, but is there any reason, like down the road, based on this, there'd be certain wetlands that really don't come forward when all they get is 16 points if they're not on corridors where we feel like, look, we've allocated a lot of money to corridor and gateway stuff that matches this. We need at least one waterway project in the mix.
Right.
I don't know, until we see one, I don't know, as far as weighting them. Depends on how comprehensive the master plan is. If it really has everything that is a high priority in the county, then we start with that.
You're speaking specifically to trails.
Yeah, I thought that's where we were.
I was speaking more or less to the main 6 categories.
Okay.
So overall.
Okay.
Should we look at those evenly weighted, more or less, or should there be some big differences between them?
It's hard for me to make a case to give priority to one over the others right
Yeah.
now.
Right. I don't disagree.
I just feel differently at the end of the, towards the end, when we see how it worked out.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think this is a tool. We can always come back and change the numbers and reset based on what we're seeing, right? So we can leave them like this, or we, if we want to still keep them more or less weighted similarly, we could round them off to logical numbers and have some be 15 points and other, one of the categories be 20 points or something like that. Two of the categories be 20 points.
Why don't we get a couple projects and look at them? I think you're gonna be surprised in both situations, how you change things.
I do think we'd wanna, the next pass we do, we'd come through here and say, is this a cumulative, or is this like each item is scored high? Because I think if I'm the major highway on the top one, that's 16 points automatically, it's not cumulative. Whereas our Lisa one, our land one is a cumulative one. So I think we need to come up with the way that those 16 points are allocated.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, because each of these each of these categories, if they have multiple subcategories, they could potentially be weighed less if you go through, because if there's like 2 subcategories compared to like 8, that even though it might achieve this goal generally, because it achieves one of the items fully, it won't reflect that in the scoring, so the scoring itself might be weighted differently.
Yeah, one thing I thought about that is that some of them could score, like in the land part of it, agriculture. It could total more than 16, but it can't. It maxes at 16. If the way we do it is detrimental to agriculture, then we maybe make it so that it can add up to more than it, so it balances it.
Yeah. So you could do like a max of 16 or whatever that number is, but then each subcategory is weighed higher, and so if they hit 2 or 3, they'll get all their full 16.
Right. Because I think on the first one, you're on a major highway, boom, you get 16 points. Let's move on.
Yeah, and if it's a sub-highway, you get half of that or
Right.
something.
It's not, you don't get more because you also did this one.
You can't be on a
Yeah.
major and a minor
And
highway.
I think that's pretty much what we did in Lisa too, I would say. Where, if you're along a major highway, for example, you get 100 points. You get 100% of those points or something like that. If you get one of these lesser categories, you get a smaller percentage of those points.
And then that would be similar to number 2, right? If you're on the view from 91 at the mouth of Wellsville Canyon, you get a 16.
Yeah, those are the kinds of decisions we can make.
And then as you go down the list, what's the most important?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are kind of a yes or no question. You're either there or you're not.
Yeah, and so how many points do you get?
You're not at 2 of them, you're at 1 of them.
So what would you like us to do? Should we take your feedback and try to update this?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
We probably better start having the questions on how does this get structured in GIS, what sort of programming needs to happen to.
Yeah, I'll
Because it sounds like some some members would like to
Test it.
yeah, let's do some tests of it, that sort of thing.
I'll talk to our GIS department and just see what options are available for doing this type of evaluation.
Okay. And, yeah, I'm sure Glenn Bush, who helped to develop the Lisa structure, he and people that he works with over at our offices are GIS programmers, so they could be helpful potentially.
Would it be possible to take a couple of existing easements that are considered either random selection, maybe 2 or 3, and just score them? Maybe we could do that here if it hasn't been done, just to help go from the theoretical to the real? And kind of calibrate our calibrations?
I think those would be good
Just an
examples to
exercise.
use.
The other thing would be is for us to throw in some things that we want to test, that you think would be, like, this would be a good place
Pick
at
a
it.
parcel and see how it comes out.
I mean, our, when we were building this up, is like, let's preserve our view into the valley. Well, let's throw some of those, the ones that you saw, I mean, like, take a picture of that and then say, okay, what about a parcel in this view that we just saw? How does it score?
Look at the size, look at the score, look at the cost, look at bang for the buck.
Yeah, bang for the buck's gonna be hard for us to do at this point, right? But that's what we kinda wanna have a sense for.
Yeah.
And that goes to what, Dave, you said all along. I think a willing landowner, the bang for the buck will be there more likely than.
That and actually seeing it.
If I recall right, that same swath has scored really high in agriculture, is that right?
Yeah. So, would committee members like to follow up with us via email, on any suggested locations you want to try and score, or want to talk about that now?
I'd say throw some out, see what happens.
If we're just looking at the GIS criteria, it wouldn't be too hard to,
Yeah.
would be, I mean, it's measured already, we just read off the
Yeah.
value, yes or no.
And we've talked about Joe's easement multiple times today. Maybe
Yeah.
we could use his existing easement as one
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think anything in that view shed I'd like to see, not just on the highway.
Something
Because
along
if
the
you just went
gateway.
to the highway, some of it's just more in an open area as you come out of there. Tell you, it means something though when you know you're home.
You can take part of Joe's deal that isn't conservation easement finished right, but you can take and see if you can finish them. You can take the Mickles property and do that. You can do Greg Scaplin's property and look at that, because that's gonna give you a whole different view of that. You can do Boyd Schiss's place, and which is already an easement, but it would be kind of interesting because it's only 25 acres. But there's some things in there I think you would learn a little bit from that. I mean, you could grab those and just put them out. Have everybody take a look at it and put it through your screen.
Okay.
And see how you come out.
might be some things that just jump out as, oh, we really missed the boat here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or,
Well,
yeah,
that-
this was good.
Throw out some ideas for non-existing conservation easement projects.
I think anything adjacent to USU's research farm.
That kind of, Yeah, the American West Heritage Center, for example,
Yeah.
area, vicinity. Yeah.
One that would be interesting, although it's gonna get surrounded by stuff, is would the Dr. Pierce barn
Right.
ever fall on this list? Now, if I'm right, it's owned by Stevenson, if I'm right. Am I right?
I've heard that. I don't know if that's true, but I have heard that he is the owner.
I think it's owned by Elder Stevenson.
Oh, Gary?
Gary
He owns
Stevens.
that? Did he just buy it for its?
I think it was a family property.
Really?
I'm just guessing.
So I heard that the property owner was going to tear it down and that Elder Stevenson's family or trust or somebody went out and bought it and
I think he's right.
That would be on the GIS.
It is, yeah. That's where I got the name, and that's where I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting.
yeah, they bought it and then they got some funding from the local community to help revitalize the barn and to save it from being torn down.
And anyway, yeah, I mean, talk an example, I don't know, is that,
It's a well-known example.
Take the parcel and throw it out,
yeah.
see what you see.
The white barn in Park City was preserved through the same process.
The one in Heber.
In Park City, between,
The one in Heber was done, when you come into Heber, barn that's there, they did the same thing.
same thing, yeah, I'm talking about, yeah, Kimball Junction to Park City, which is in how many pictures, right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed the little marker just north of the Pierce's, or the Dr. Pierce's barn?
Yeah, there's a little historic marker.
Yeah, it was an Eagle Scout project. Somebody has fenced off a little area with a marker that says, look at the barn, here's what it is. Just north there.
I even think that, yeah, that could be improved as a iconic property, but.
Yeah. Okay.
Throw out the Stokes Nature piece that's next to Furman's. That's another, because they were talking about an easement there, but that'll be interesting to look at that.
Wait, that's,
Sure,
What?
sure, we can look at it.
Kendra's, executive director.
I lost something, I don't know what's going on.
Kendra is the executive director over that property.
See,
Yeah.
she knows.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can grade my property, I won't take it personally.
Actually looked as an easement for that for a while.
It has an easement.
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, the whole, with Furman's and all that was looked at together.
Should we take a look at some of the trail criteria stuff? I think that'd be good.
Yeah,
With the rest of our time.
there's two quick examples, and it would be good to kind of get an opinion. I don't know if you saw, I threw another tab on there, because
Okay.
I was assigned to do a build, and then a build got done, and I was like, well, that build actually looks pretty good. So this one goes into, like, it goes very specifically through a number of items.
Can you scroll up, or is there?
That's the
categories
top,
on the
sorry.
top?
That is the top.
Oh, okay.
So
So it
it's-
doesn't say what the,
So the trails on the municipal, it's possible versus how many score. That was the idea, like what's your score? So, and this total 100. So the trail has regional, sub-regional, one would be score and possible. Yeah. It gets into the contiguous as a standalone, connects previously unconnected communities by way of active transportation. The safety factors on there at number 10, on 10. One thing that came up out of our meeting, if you go down, where is it? Just scores oh, number 9 right there. This is something that Tim brought up. This was the opportunistic. He kind of wanted, because we had a lot of value on a trail getting completed. And he's like, if I've got a place that that's the only place that we can put a bridge in an entire area, and someone gives us the right to it, kind of an opportunistic, there's a moment in time. He wanted to be able to take advantage of that moment in time, whereas our discussion really weighted on, can we get this thing done? Are we going to have something to show for it other than an easement that they have 10 years from now, and there's no trail? So that's why that's on there, and we can determine whether it should be on there or not. This is the number 10, the trail has supporting non-participating landowners, support for future acquisition. This was one where, like, if we're making a trail from here to Mendon, and you know for sure that the landowners around it have no desire to be part of it, is that going to be problematic? So, do you have their support or not? Funds for building the trail have been budgeted. 10 points. It has a near-term completion date, 5, and the submitting municipalities contribute to the acquisition. So this is one way to do it. Did I hit number 8? What's number 8 on here, on the 8th row? Yeah, the number of municipalities or population benefiting from this trail. This would be one that would need to be, there's a lot of subjectivity in the scoring, by the way. This isn't quite as objective. Wayne's World, do you guys know Wayne's World? Anyone know the Wayne's World Trail?
On the Wayne's Loop?
Wayne's Loop, yeah. I think Wayne's World is what it was called for.
Yeah.
It's a trail out just above Mendon. Got so popular, what was nice is you could take your little kids on it. It had a lot of, right, and so Wayne, what's Wayne's last name? Anyway, he went out and built this trail, and then everybody started using it, and they're like, whoa, you know, and then a bunch of things had to be figured out, which Landis is constantly working on this access to this trail because everybody goes up there to use it. He's quit putting signs up that it's currently closed until they get the parking lot situation because everybody steals that sign. But the interesting thing is this isn't, while it is a Mendon trail and Mendonites use it most, tons of people use that trail from.
I was gonna say, I have a brother-in-law in North Ogden who called me up. He's like, "Hey, I heard there's a new trail. Do you want to go ride it with me this weekend?" So yeah, it's gotten out.
Yeah. So it's just, again, I think when we go through it here and we say the number of municipalities or populations benefiting from this trail, there's going to be a little bit of discussion of is this a regional type of a situation where multiple municipalities, or is this just you're basically, we got a little piece that will benefit a smaller number. And so those are the criteria. So this is one way, gets really like down to the points for multiple things. The one that was put together by the staff, I think is really good too. Again, I think it's going to be very subjective. We're going to come in and score it because we can't do a score to a trail width. Like that doesn't, like you can't compare the Bonneville Shoreline Trail with a piece that's going to be a 12-foot wide piece. It's more like so they have trail attributes, the number of user type, the type. I think length isn't even, I don't think, that's a tough one to say this is more valuable because it's length. I'm looking at the value of it. If you're I looked at a piece yesterday that was 30 feet long, and it basically, if you get that 30 feet, you connect West Logan to the entire range of everything there, but we're short 30 feet. So I think that's a little bit hard to put length into it, but, this one then.
Well, but I would say to that, you know, there are other components that would capture that aspect, right? Hey, it's only 30 feet. Well, that's your opportunistic category, right?
Yeah.
Or,
Could
it's
be.
going to score really well for that.
Could be.
May not get a high score in length, but at the same time, somebody says, hey, we've got 5 or 10 miles of trail we can do here, or something like that. Length matters, right? Like, that's a big
Yeah,
project.
I can see that, yeah.
That would be important.
Yeah, and here again, it's pretty subjective, like, I don't, I mean, you put some score to it, but I don't think these individual things ought to all get a point because they almost go together.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
You're right about that.
and it could even be each of us score these things. Here's the application, go through the map that they provided and score these things. Come in here, we justify the scores and go from there. Regional and sub-regional connectivity, this really comes to how much connection does it have to everything. Again, 16.67, I don't have a problem with these scores. Community connectivity, proximity to population, let's see what else is on there. Contribution to connection of previously unconnected communities, that's a big deal. That's, I mean, a big part of what the state's doing. Number of municipalities or total county residents using. The safety factors, 16, feasibility, this gets into, they've done a cost estimate, they know how they're gonna fund it, all of that. And then the opportunistic was thrown on there as 16.67. So there's two different side-by-sides and we can flush out one of it or the other depending on which is preferred. I really don't have a strong preference one way or the other. In fact,
I don't either. I mean, the alternative looks great too. But I don't feel strongly one way or the other.
I think with it we can arrive at a good outcome.
The alternative is easy to understand, I think, which is nice.
I think I've included everything in this one, in that, it just is a little more granular. And I've also, I mean, I did not throw length in there. If it's on the master plan, it will score really high. And I think, also a longer trail is gonna have more regional connectivity, right? Because it's just gonna hit more points, it's gonna connect communities.
Is this form on the shared folder?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just one of the tabs at the bottom here.
all right.
Can we put unique and irreplaceable on there too?
For trails?
Yeah.
That might overlap with your opportunistic to some degree.
Yeah.
It's unique opportunity and
Yeah.
I like that idea, combining it with that.
Do I have, I do have opportunistic on this, and maybe we could even word that into there,
yeah,
so that it's, are you taking into account this unique piece?
yeah.
You're like the Pony Express situation.
For these that have numbers, are you envisioning defining it? So like the number of municipalities or population benefiting, how many does it have to be to get 10?
I think that's super, super hard
Yeah.
to do. I think it's almost us, again, scoring it because, I mean, let's just say that you get you connect Richmond and Smithfield with a trail off the highway. Every road biker, if you make that wide enough, every road biker in the entire valley will be using that trail. How do you say, I mean, how do I say with an objective criteria other than us discussing and the person, whoever's putting this together, providing that information to be like, look, what we've seen is A, B, and C. Wayne's Loop. That's like I think you gotta look at the particular trail and say, it's Landis coming in and presenting it, or the city coming in and talking about it and saying, this is Green Canyon is covered by everybody in the valley. You'll see them up there at some point. Not everybody in the valley, but every community in the valley.
Yeah, for me, the trail criteria, selecting projects, I'm not expecting as many trail applications as I am conservation easement. Maybe I'm wrong about that, right? Like, to me, there's a lot of work that has to go into working with landowners to designate a corridor and then to apply to this program, right?
But there's also a lot of work on a conservation easement.
There is, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I just think I don't know. My expectation is there's going to be more conservation easement applications than trail applications. So my point was there's going to be fewer trail applications
That we need to compare.
to evaluate, and the system sort of suits itself to that. It has more subjectivity, which I think is fine.
Now, I do think if we had, let's just say, all of a sudden we have 5 applications, we could say, let's set these aside, try to get it a little more granular, because then we know what we're comparing.
Yeah.
We set in a meeting like this, and I say, this one has 5 connections and this one has 3. Do we want to use that as waiting for the 16 points?
Yeah.
I don't think every connectivity is created equally either.
Okay.
Assuming that the county is going to present maybe half of these, what do you think?
Yeah, so,
And do you think the county would be presenting half of them, or do you think it's?
I think the county, maybe in partnership with other municipalities, will likely bring in a bunch of these. I know Landis has been talking to several cities who have already expressed some interest in trying to secure some of those easements. And we've actually had meetings, as even last Friday, we sat down and we talked about what trails, where's our lowest hanging fruit, where we feel like we have willing property owners that'd be willing to sell property if we brought in applications, or partnered with cities and brought in applications. So I do think there is quite a bit of factors. Personally, I think what we'd want to look at is what will provide the greatest connectivity amongst residents. And so that would be either gaps in trails, or servicing the highest population, or maybe connecting across city boundaries that will take multiple jurisdictions to work together in order to secure that funding and do that project. So I think some of those are going to be the things that we'll look at and weigh the most, and whether or not we'll bring it in. Because there is a few projects that we feel like are low-hanging fruit, but some of them are entirely within Logan, and we know that Logan's just going to make them do it when they build the property out in the next couple of years, and so those might not be as immediate for us to tackle. Sorry, I'm not sure I answered your question.
Well, it sounds like, based on what you've said, this would meet the need. Like,
Yeah, I think
it would
so.
match up with what you're relaying.
Yeah, I think so.
Other thoughts?
Looking at number 8 there, it might be better to have that one be a multiplier rather than adding in just 10 points. Like, compared to the number of people benefiting from the trail. You take all these criteria, and if you have 2 equal physical trails, but 10 times as many people will benefit from one than the other. Should probably not be just adding 10 points, but multiplying all the other scores by the number of people. And that might apply to some other criteria as well. So there might be 2 types of scoring. One is qualities, and then the other is quantity. acres might be the same way. You might have the most safe piece of 100 yards of trail in the world, but you've got another one over here that's 5 miles long, and they're not equal in the public's mind.
Yeah.
So some things would be more multiplicative than additive when we get down to.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to apply that a little bit. I mean, yeah.
And the same might apply to the other criteria for
What do
open
you wanna
space as
do?
well.
I guess number of municipalities or population, you could do it potentially by giving them a point for every 1,000 people that lives within, I don't know, a mile or.
Here's a problem I've got with proximity a little bit on some of these trails. Wayne's Loop isn't connected to any population. If you got an easement on the Hiram to Mendon Canal, it's not in proximity to that many people. Super important, right? Because it would be a destination that you take your kids out and you ride a bike on a Sunday across the valley. I mean, it's a flat trail.
Would that not be covered in a different criteria though?
Yeah, it's just it's just if you're using that as if it's too loaded, then it becomes.
Yeah, because I would agree with you, because I mean, if you think about some of the big established trails in the valley, like the Logan River Trail, for instance, that attracts people from, I mean, that has hundreds of people that use it daily, and a lot of those people don't live immediately adjacent. Or even Blacksmith Fork, that new trail system from Hiram, people commute from all over the valley to go hike it or ride it. And so you're right that trails themselves can be attractions and attract people from all over the place.
Yeah, probably number of users is better than proximity.
Yeah.
And the sidewalk along Main Street is high proximity. Doesn't meet any other criteria.
Yeah, and I it's tough because you don't want to some of that would overfavor Logan, for example. Although they're going to have a lot of users no matter what. But yeah, and some of these rural ones would actually get potentially really heavily utilized.
And partly because they're scenic, is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, is scenery on here?
It's not. No.
That might affect the number of users or the perceived value of the trail.
And this would need to be weighed in there. I think on the number of users there's different uses for different trails. Bonneville Shoreline is a lot of us, there's walkers and a lot of different types of people, but you can't take a stroller on it. You can't put your kids on their bikes on that trail. And both of them are important.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times when you're doing trail planning, you're thinking of recreational trail use and transportation trail use. There's certain trails that you put in to get people from point A to point B, and others that are used more for recreational purposes. There's a lot of hybrids, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if you look up and down the Wasatch Front. I was just recently speaking, Murdoch, or the
railroad,
yeah, the railroad.
Davis Railroad Trail.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those that kind of a dual purpose where people are using it for transportation, but also for recreation. But there are going to be some trails that are going to be more geared to one of those ends.
Yeah, it's amazing, the trails around the universities, how morning it's commute, and then it gets heavy, it just varies.
Yep.
So I think, again, we're developing these programs because we're anticipating we're going to get at least a number of applications, right? So there's no point in going through this, and if we get 3 applications, we're like, okay, we can fund all 3 of those, no problem. But we're gonna have to, we're looking for a way to help prioritize which projects should get funded, right? That's the idea.
Yep.
Okay.
Or, yeah, and it's also what we give to municipalities, just to have a little sense. In other words, that 10 points for them, participating to me can be pretty important, like, because if they're asking us for all of the money every time, then our 2 million, if it's 2 million, our 2 million goes much less far than if they're participating,
Yeah, for sure.
and we're doing 30% of it or something. Although, does the county ever itself pay for acquisition?
I don't know of any time that we have had besides going after grant funds. We've had grant funds, for example, we currently received some grant to do 800 West between Nibley and Logan, because there's that missing section of trail that connects the river trail from like Firefly Park in that area. And that is stuff that the county we've contracted out with an engineering firm to do the design work and stuff, but we didn't use any of county money to do that. We used grants either from RAPS or other organizations. So we'll do that, but the county in this general fund typically just doesn't budget money for trail acquisition. And most of the time when we do that, we're doing it on behalf of a municipality too, because a lot of these trails are not within unincorporated areas.
Which is exactly what we'd be doing, I think, right, with these funds. We're not acquiring for the county. There's usually another local government that's gonna.
Yeah, but
take-
if you're going from here, from Logan to Mendon, that's county,
Maybe so.
or the Hiram. If you got the Hiram Mendon Canal easement, they were willing to, that would be county.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are some conversations we're starting to have, is if the county should take a more active role in securing and maintaining those type of facilities. And I personally, my thought is that the county should be a little bit more proactive and be willing to do that. But in the end, it'll be up to the executive's office and the county council, so.
If you look at the railroad trail through Davis, you look at Jordan River Trail through Salt Lake, Murdoch Trail, the Washington County trails, who is taking responsibility for those?
So I can't speak to all of them, but a lot of them are maintained by the individual cities that they go through. So those cities will take their section.
Their section.
Yeah. Because I know like Lehigh for the Jordan River Trail and the other trails that go through them, they bought a plow, they do all the maintenance on their own trail system, but when it hits their city boundary, it's handed off to the next city.
Okay.
And I know St. George.
That Murdoch
area-
Trail goes through how many cities? Like
Yeah.
5, 6?
Yeah, exactly. And I know St. George, their trail system goes from St. George and Washington along kind of where the Mayor's Loop along the Virgin River. And I know the cities have divided up ownership and maintenance. And sometimes you can even see, if you ride your bike, you can see when you enter into a new city, because kind of like when you do a road, you know, the maintenance level changes.
Well, and then they got the Bluff one. I mean, they've got those all over.
I could speak to Salt Lake County, and I know that there are segments that they are responsible for, but they generally try to partner with municipalities, and the county will, you know, acquire the corridor and or construct the trail, but then have an agreement with the cities to take that over. So it depends on the context.
Yep.
All of the above, I think.
And in the new case, the state.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you guys like one of these to push more than the other? first tab or the second tab, any? Where you just have 16.6 points and it's all some subcategories and we assign it, or?
I didn't notice the second tab. I probably need to spend a little more time with it.
Okay, yeah, maybe, yeah, take a look at those two and.
Which do you think is better?
I don't have a strong preference one way or the other.
I
I think
don't
we can,
either,
I think we
that's
can
why
get to
we're
the same place. I think it's just. Any thoughts? Huh?
I think they're both fine. We can merge them if we need, so whatever the committee decides.
If we go with one or the other, I do have some input, like on a couple of things on.
I think we may just lean on you and Brent to say
Okay.
which one.
And just say, this is the one we're pushing, let's just
Let's focus
narrow
on
this in.
that, 'cause I-
And the thing we want to get to is the point where we have this, where we can say, go to the county council and say, this is the way we're gonna score trails. This is our plan, can we release this to the municipalities? And they give us the go ahead and boom, we move on.
One of the, just as we wrap this up, because I know we need to go, one of the aspects that's still in the back of my mind is, you know, even if, just using Lisa as an example, you know, there's a 30 to 40 page booklet that, you know, explains how you're gonna score every component, right? We look at some of the other examples like the Lee Ray McAllister or the UDAF funding and stuff like that. There's, you know, a book that comes along that says this is how we're gonna look at your project or what you need to provide us and all that kind of stuff, so just.
We just have
I'm
one
just
page.
mentioning it because.
We just have one page that says Dave's gonna look at it.
That works for me. Anyway, yeah, I'm just mentioning it because I don't know if that's where we need to get to. It's possible we do.
Can we
I mean,
avoid it?
Anytime we put this in front of people, right, whether this is the council or the public, they're gonna wanna know, okay, well, what does this mean? And you gotta have an explanation.
That's asking us to do a little more than they do for RAPs, right?
Maybe so.
If they take the RAPs thing, then
Yeah,
we as a
that's-
committee have an ability to put numbers to these
There's
things.
not like written criteria or anything.
Oh,
for
I wish
that.
there were, because it would make it a lot easier.
And that's what I'm saying, a little. We were already surpassing,
Yeah, without the explanation.
yes,
Yes, what
we've
you're saying.
surpassed that with
Yes.
that, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. All right, anything else before we,
So on the agenda, just as a reminder, the Cash Summit is coming up, and Chris and Eric, you both said you'd be willing to present at that, just about what Cosac is doing. Does that still work for both of you?
That still works for me.
I think so. Do you know what the particulars are?
Not
Like how much, and what I mean by that is like how much time,
Time.
that sort of thing, what time of the day?
It would be towards the afternoon, I believe. Like,
Wasn't it a breakout?
I think it was a breakout.
A breakout, so it'd be a selective people that chose to go into that.
Yeah, and so it wouldn't be a full group, it would be, so I think there's gonna be 3 breakouts and right after the lunch.
Will they
So
rotate
that's-
at all?
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's just a choice you have.
Mm-hmm.
So it's November 2nd, which is before our next Cosac
Yes.
meeting. And they're interested in having us just discuss what Cosac is and what we're up to, kind
Yeah.
of thing?
Yeah, just an update on what's going on.
Okay.
Remind me the audience.
Local land planners, developers, right?
Yeah, so the audience will be a mixture of public, so council, city council members, planning commissioner members, planners, engineers, those type of things. But then you also have local developers, real estate agents, others who might be interested in land use throughout the county. Occasionally you get attorneys there,
Engineering firm.
engineering firms, yes, thank you.
And I want to say the breakout sessions are 45 minutes. I could be wrong, so I'll get back to you about all the details.
Yeah. Let's say we're meeting
Yeah, please do.
Wednesday, to kind of finalize some of that information, I'll get it back.
Yeah, whatever feedback you can give us, obviously I can start with the presentation that we gave to the council, which is kind of a quick overview, and then we can add to it.
Hit the trails and
Yeah, exactly.
the open space. Who, remind me who's the host?
So Bragg is the one who hosts it,
Bragg,
but the county and a few other municipalities and like Civil Solutions hosts or sponsor it.
There you go. Okay, if you guys can just help me and Eric with the particulars when you can, that'd be great.
Okay.
When you know, let us know. Okay, anything else, committee members? Okay, if not, we'll stand adjourned.